So I thought this is just like the signs of spring. Beautiful, gorgeous yellow. It's just really kind of all about the holidays and everything, isn't it? It really reminds us of, that cheerful spring colour. But also, the other thing is with it, um, it's really nice to actually look at the different tones of yellow that you can get because, they're all different. So obviously, sometimes daffodils are quite, some of the colours are quite bright and acidic. These are a little bit kind of getting a bit warmer in the middle. And then these ones actually have got little centres in them. So obviously this is just big strips of mimosa, which is one of my favourite flowers. I absolutely love it. Um, and yeah, you get all these little just like little centres that you can see. And also you can, when they're a little bit more in the shadow, they're a bit warmer. They're a bit and a bit, some of them are a bit brighter. So what we can do is just drop in lots of nice colour, not lots of little colours into it. But obviously the smaller you go, the less you'll be able to see the centres of them. The bigger you go, you can see a little bit more of the centre. So I think the key word tonight is actually dabbing. Because it's really lovely to just kind of start dabbing in these colours and getting them kind of watery. Now I'm going to mix this up a bit because I love the blue on here. So I'm going to put the blue vase with this mimosa, which is why I've got my picture the other way around, which is fine. So I'm just going to kind of decide on the shape, what the shape might be. Now, obviously, it's all going to be the top of it's all going to be underneath. But I'm going to just draw it as though it's there. Um, so I'm going to make this mainly about all the foliage coming all the way out here. So it will be hidden all the top of that. So I'm just going to start the vase. I'll do mine darker, but when you're drawing out with pencil, then obviously you need to make it nice and light so it doesn't come up. So I'm just going to get both of those, whenever you're drawing a vase or anything, you get both of the ellipse, this top one and this little one in. As I said, this will all be covered over with flowers anyway. And then we can, I would go decide how far out you want the vase to come. So I would put a little mark at the widest place. I just find that much easier. And then I'm going to bring out one side, do whichever you're most comfortable with, because I think we always have a dominant side when we're drawing this. That's, our best side. And then I'm just going to match that and kind of make it, this one particularly looks symmetrical. So that's what I'm going to go for. So mine's a little bit more squat because I'm going to lose all of this underneath the foliage anyway, so this will come all the way down. So I'm going to pop that into place, and with the watercolour, we're going to be working light to dark. I'm going to test my colours quite a bit with all the different yellows and things just to get the colours that I want. And then I tend to, so whichever flower you decide you want to do, whether it's the daffodils or these, they look a bit like phaloxes, actually. What are they? They're just chrysanthemums. I think they're chrysanthemums, aren't they? But we've got, let me just grab the other one. We've got these ones or these dafts as well. So there's lots of lovely tones and shades that we can drop in there. But in yellow is really nice because we don't actually, with these particular ones, we've got nothing catching the light massively. It might just be slightly more yellow, but we've got no white in there. So you don't have to think about reserving any of the colours within here. So it's just a case of just really enjoying getting in with the colours, really. So I tend to always put some stems into place just so that I know what I'm going to attach things to. So with these, it's a bit clearer. So you pop your stems up, even if you've not got the leaves on them, at least then, you can then attach the heads to them. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually, get some, look at where the biggest stems are, and I'm going to start to pop these into place. Now, I'm not going to draw in all of that foliage actually. I'm going to start with all of the yellow because the yellow is the lightest colour. If we can pop some green in if you want to behind it, but actually if you do that, it's going to have to be quite light and then you'll have to darken off the other areas. Otherwise the yellow won't cover because the difference with watercolours is that they are translucent and they're not opaque. So the yellows won't cover over with watercolor. So all I'm going to do here when I'm doing this stem is I'm actually just going to do some of those higgledy-piggledy branches as opposed to that have got the flowers on. They don't have any foliage on. They're just stems with the mimosa flowers on. So I'm going to pop some of these on. And then I'm not going to draw all those tiny things in. I'm just going to start dropping the colours in, actually. So that's why I'm just attaching a stem just to make it a little bit easier for myself. And of course, they're all twisty, but you don't even have to do that. If you feel like you just want to kind of just drop them in wherever, that's fine with it. And you don't want to pop all these lines and you want to make it really loose, then by all means, absolutely, just go for it. But I'm just getting in just a stem, even if they're kind of coming over from another flower, just so I've got an idea of where to start, because for me, I need a little bit more planning out than that, but you might not need it. We're all so different in the way that we work. So if you find that you can just follow it all and start to drop them in, whichever ones you're doing, then that's no problem. So I'll bring this stem up here. Lots of little shoots shooting off from there as well. So I'm just popping those in. They're funny, aren't they? They're a really good symbol of I think they're actually symbolic of like celebration of females, because they're given on International Women's Day quite a lot. I think lots of countries give them for all sorts of reasons. I was very lucky actually. I did actually receive like them in a bouquet on International Women's Day from my husband, which was really lovely and thoughtful actually. There we go. So just popping some in. So yeah, so just getting a few bits in place. But as I said, you can go much looser than this and just start to drop them in should you want to. And there's lots going on in the middle, etc. Where there's less stem in the middle, I'll probably not do anything in there. Just leave that a little bit empty. There's more of these ones at the back there that are and of course you can put extra stems in or less stems as well, Just move them wherever you want them. I might just pop a little bit of the background where the background of the table is. I might not use it, but I'm going to pop it in just so it's something it's so we've got something to place it on. There we go. So I'm going to come back and do this. I mean, the only other thing I might just pop in a little bit just to remind myself to reserve the white on it is some of this reflection that we're getting on this other one, just so that we know it's a ceramic. And then the other one's a little bit lighter, but again, might just help just to pop a little bit of something on there. You don't have to though. There we go. So now last week we did a lot of wetting wet, didn't we? So you can actually damp the paper beforehand if you want to. You could do the same again. I'm just going to look at the different tones of yellow and how we can kind of change those, bring them up and bring them down. So whatever yellow we've got, you can quite easily, maybe my rounds, I'm just pretty much using round brushes today. You can look at them. So if I bring this across in my little kit here, I've just got two yellows, which is quite common. I've got lemon yellow, which is more acidic and bright, and I've got Cajun yellow, which is much warmer. Much warmer. It's all, it's got a tiny bit of red in it, perhaps. But of course, we could use anything orange. I mean, I've got vermilion, which is very bright. I may add a tiny bit in. I'll just put a very tiny bit there because it's very strong. And I'm also feeling I'm getting some kind of little tiny bits of burnt sienna, which is your warm brown. You can also, if you haven't got burnt sienna, you could add like a bit of yellow ochre, or you might have something called raw sienna. That's like a bit more between the two. But I just felt like when I was doing this, when I've done this before, it feels like there's just some kind of quite a little bit of warmth and little dots in the middle of there. But again, if you were doing this one, these chrysanthemums here, you can start to dot in some darker colours as we've got the lighter ones into place. So you'd want to be really putting into place your lemon yellow first. So I'm just going to just wash that down. But it really is absolutely lovely just to get really carried away in the process. Now, you don't have to put lemon yellow everywhere. I'm just going to, what it does do is if we have a few different tones, I'm just pushing that out a bit. If we have a few different tones of yellow, just going to test that on there. So that one is watered down quite a bit, but obviously I could water it down even more. So I'll take a little bit and water it down even more at the bottom, just by adding more water to it. And then it becomes, it's a little bit thinner and, less acidic, I suppose. So I may only use this in a few little places where I think maybe it's catching the tops of some or something. And I still might drop in some other colours anyway. So I might drop in some cadmium colour into that. And again, it just gives it a little bit more depth, really. So I'm just going to go either side, where I think these are. And I'm just following the similar, very natural pattern. I don't want it to be too symmetrical, but I'm just looking, and they kind of go either side. So we're looking at the form of the flowers, whichever we do, whether it's these or the daffodils, just looking at the tubes on the daffodils, and just look at how, whereabouts they kind of come in. Because once we start to really go in, but even if you're doing these, have a little go at dabbing those into place. So as I said, if you're wanting to wet your paper first, you can, but it will run a little bit more. You just got to expect that. I'm not wetting it because I want to work on this and then dropping the green behind, and I don't think it will be dry. So I'm choosing not to do that, but it's entirely up to you if you want um, to do that. Just dropping a few in. And then sometimes it just gives a little bit of a slightly different, so it's not, everything's not the same depth of colour. Makes it feel a little bit, it's a little bit more depth. Because those, the darker ones will sink back a little bit, even though they're not really that acidic. So I'll just pop some other colours together. So we've got that, and then we've got the Cadian yellow there. So I'm just going to get some of this Cadian yellow. Move it down here. And again, you're looking at the depth. So how much pigment do you want to go on there? That's got quite a bit of pigment on. Do I want it this depth or do I want it a bit thinner? So again, we're just making decisions about how thick we want that paint. So that's got a lot less pigment in it. So you could just have a play and decide, do you want more, do you want less? But of course, we can take those two yellows and do lots to it anyway. What we can do is we can add a touch of the vermilion to it to make it warmer, or even the sienna. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring a little bit of this over this side. Bring that up over there. And I'm going to bring the tiniest bit of sienna into it, because again, sienna is quite a strong colour. But I think that gives quite a nice warmth to those ones that you maybe, you're a bit more in the shadow with. And then we'll end up now with three quite different tones of yellow just by adding something to, a little something to them. You can try the same, with with the vermilion as well again, which is a strong colour. I'll try the lemon yellow, but we could try the cadmium yellow. Just adding a tiny bit of vermilion, which is quite strong. You only want to really lifting the smallest amounts out. Or it's, you know, you might have a cadmium orange or something like that that you could use. Or even a tiny bit of red. So just see what you've got just to play about with these yellows. That one's that one. So that's the fourth colour we've made, all with different bases. So we can get such a range of oranges and yellows just from those few, adding a few different colours here and there, which makes it, and you know, it's just interesting, isn't it? And then we can see, we'll get the depth, because the lightest ones will pop forwards a bit, as in any landscape. And you can also, if you want to, you know, drop when it feels like it's comfortable to drop a little bit of another colour into that if you want to, see what happens. So we're just exploring how dry we want it before we drop it in. Do we want it to stay in one place, or do we want to spread out a little bit? Same when we're doing these, or the daffodils, you know, you can drop the colours in while it's wet so it feels like it moves together. If you want it to dry in between, so you've got a very specific patch, that's fine. So we were just answering all of those questions, really. So I'm just going to start to play with some of these other colours, and start to look at where I might add them. I'm just dabbing. Oh, you've got, just enjoy that process of building these up, really. Dropping them in. Just enjoy, you know, using a few different tones here and there. And it'll look a little bit patchy to start with, but before long it'll feel a lot nicer to work with. You'll definitely spot ones as well. Spot little bits that are not joined to anything. That's absolutely fine. Just start dropping them in. I mean, the thing is, the smaller you work like this, the less detail you'll have in the centre. If you're working A4, A3, you'll be able to drop a little, you know, the little centres and things in quite easily. But if you're working, you know, A5, A6 even, which is postcard size, it'll be more difficult to find the centres or whatever. But that's fine. You can just vary the tone a bit more, like, you know, like this. But nice, the observation part of it's lovely because, you know, we're really taking a look, you know, taking a look at the way each of the flowers are formed. And I think that's the beauty of doing flower studies, because the more more you do specific ones, you just get really familiar with the shape. It means it's much easier the next time you come to do one, or even other flowers that might, may actually be similar that you didn't realise were. Oh yeah, that's quite similar to this such and such a flower. I'm just dropping in slightly different tones each time with this. I just enjoy really painting. Enjoying dabbing away. It's a really nice one to do, as I said, because we're not having to really, on this particular one, really think about all of those. Oh, I've got to reserve this and that and make sure that doesn't cover there. Sometimes that's really nice just to paint away without having to think about what needs reserving. And if you're not sure where to drop things, you can always look back to your little, your colour sketch to compare. Just dropping them in. Suppose, as well, if you're wanting anything to pop forward a little bit, just pop that where you want it to come forward. So I'm looking at these little bits that feel like they're coming forward a bit. I'm going to pop them in here. So I want them to come forwards a bit. I'm going in nice and light there, perhaps more acidic than normal. just so that there is a bit of contrast in there. Just enjoy it, it's lovely. You start to lose your way because there's a lot going on. You can always pop in some of the really thin little, little kind of sticks. Um, you can use tip of just a tip really gently, so you're just almost dragging it through. Or you could use a rigger, which is a long, thin, like that, it's a long, thin brush. Just go grab one. I did have one, I thought here. That's it's gone back in there. There it is. That's it just looks like that, really. It's just a long, thin brush, but and then you just roll it down and then you drag it through the paint and then you can just move it through. But I find it just as easy, to be honest, with something like this, just to move, just to lightly hold the top and more precision. So things like the leaves, just pop that on. Where so the sticks, we're just looking at the different colours of them. I think I was looking at it being, let's mix it with this one, being a slightly burnt sienna colour actually. That's what I felt earlier when I was looking at it. May have popped. Yeah, because it feels like it was, I'm going to get this forest green colour on the palette as well. So it's whether I want to add a tiny bit of this forest green just to make it slightly darker. A bit of a test. Hmm. I don't want it to really take away from the leaves, so I'm going to have it nice and fine. Try that one. Okay. Problem now, I'm dragging the bits around. So again, with a rigger, you just roll it like that. So you've got plenty on, and you just kind of drag it through wherever you're seeing. But again, also you've got to just be a bit careful. It's not like that started to spread in there. So I might have to just, that's dry, wait a little bit with some of these that it has actually dried properly. And I'm not going to go and make a really harsh mark through there either. I'm just going to break it up a little bit so it comes through a little bit and not all of them. Yeah, so it's still quite wet. I think these lighter ones that I did to start with are coming through. But yeah, just bringing it through a little bit so we can see there's um, some there. One else is dry. That's still quite damp. So I may just wait. I don't get it so it doesn't spread too much. You can do a little or as much of that as you want, basically. You always make it darker if you want to, or not. You might not have it everywhere. Don't need to put every single stick. I'm just having a look at where it's where you can obviously see it. Sometimes these ones, that are thinly placed, you can see a little bit of the stems. Leave it there, I think, before I do any more of I'll leave the stems there. I'll just keep painting away, getting those lovely tones in. So I'll put this light on in the studio because it's actually starting to, the light's going off a little bit. I'm just going in now with lots of cadmium orange, yellows. Put my darker ones behind. So, when you get to a point where you think, actually, I'm not sure where I'm going now, you can always just leave it. I'm just leave mine for a couple of minutes to dry a little, and I'm going to start to weave some of these greens through it. So we'll take a pause there and see how you're getting on. Okay, so everything's going to get into a point where you can dry it. I'm just going to start to bring in some of these greens now through. I can always add more yellow where I want it a little bit heavier. The other thing we can do as well is if there's any bits in here where you want to add a centre to when it's a bit, if you don't want it to kind of drip too much, I'm going in with a bit of burnt sienna for the centre and a bit of um, just nice water. It should have dried off enough that I might be able to just get but again, I'm just going to have to test whether it's too bright or not. So I may just pop a little bit of yellow in there. Just, that's it. I'm just going to go randomly through. Just drop a few in. Just so you can almost see a strand. You know where you get these all bunched up in the middle here? And follow a strand through. It just makes it a bit more obvious, the shape here. What we're doing is we're just adding adding a little bit of context really to these flowers. And I kind of pop them. I don't just put them in the middle. I kind of just dot them around because all of the flower heads will be, not in exactly the same position. So I think it makes it look a bit more natural rather than too uniform. Nature isn't too uniform, is it? It's quite free flowing. And it just gives a bit more context to our brain. We're starting to think, oh yeah, it's a row of flowers now. The stem of each one's on a stem. And the brain's like, oh, could that be mimosa? could also experiment with, little kind of greeny colours for centres and things like that if you wanted to. And you don't have to pop them in absolutely everyone. I've kind of left a few that have not got any in, just so it's a bit soft. It's not like lots of eyes. I'm just going to think about the colours in here now. So you can go in, again, we can do exactly the same with greens as we did with the yellows and, bring the colours up or down. So we've got I've just got two greens in my kit. So I've just got like I think this one is, yeah, this one's a phthalo green light. So let's get a little bit of water in there. What it looks like. Okay, so it is quite like that. And then a forest green, which I imagine is going to be very dark and very blue green based. Let's see. Forest green's got more cooler tones in than warm. So that's, there we go. So we can add, we can use the foresty ones. We can add more blue and make them even darker, or you can add a bit of another colour for dry, adding a bit of yellow to that and see if it warms it up slightly. So we'll do that. I take the yellow, and that's what my forest green looks like. I'll take a bit more forest green. And adding a different kind of yellow or even more yellow to it. I'm going to take that lemon yellow. So we can make all sorts of tones with a couple of ones that we've got. So it's cool to warm. This one, this is quite an acidic green. But again, we can add, what should we add to that? Add a bit of cadmium into that. Well, we can even darken that off with a little bit of a blue as well. So there's so many varieties we can get. So, do we want a cooler one or a lighter one? And we're working light to dark anyway. So I'm just using a tip of this number 6 here. Very nice and pointed. You could use a little rigger if you wanted, but I'm going just to be happy just using a tip. And again, if you're not sure how to get the texture of these or the texture of the other plants, just dab on until you're happy with it. If it feels really natural to do that, just let a little go, just kind of dropping it in. So I'm going to go almost a little bit yellowy green. I'm feeling this one. I'm going to take some of this forest green here, over here. I am going to go in with a bit of cadmium. I'm also going to try a bit of burnt sienna in there because I'm seeing this kind of it feels quite warm in places, and in others it's brighter or lighter. So we'll go with that. See how that looks. Let's try that. Okay. And then I'll go in a little bit with that just on the tip. Make sure I've got plenty of it. Once you've mixed one up that you like, go in with plenty. And then you can always build up and get the darker colours. So, we're getting these interesting, aren't we? Might start with just pulling some and then just pulling the fronds off here. You can only represent it in a way that feels natural to you to do it as well. So there's no pressure to do things in a certain particular way. Stick with what feels good. And if we just and eventually, oops, I've dropped it in now. I'm going to drop in some more darker colours in a bit, but if you want them to spread out a bit, then drop them in while we're a bit damp. It's not going red, it doesn't matter, does it? Just having a little go at this in the shapes that you can see. Work my way through. And you'll see, even like in here in this one, you can get some, you can work right down to, you've got these reddy colours and you can get in really then just finish off with the dark colours in between the stems, which, create that kind of feeling that it's quite dense in there. I'm just kind of darkening off some of these sections. But again, you don't have to go dark because it's your watercolour. You want to keep all your colours a bit light and, you know, then just do that. End of the day, we're just all we're doing is we're creating our own artist impression. What we can see. We can add things, take them away. Well, not take them away, actually. That was a bit of a fib, sorry. We can't really take them away with watercolour, can we? But we can certainly add things. You know, as you're getting there, if there's any more you think, oh, I'd like to put more flat florals in, then you just add them before you do the before you put in the foliage. So when you get to a point where you feel like you want to stop and just have a little check and just go from it. I'm just going in darker now, so I'm just getting the really dark bits that I want to probably somewhere in this middle section here, around there where there's a lot of green. It's quite deep. I'm just going to dab that on myself, actually, do a bit of dabbing. Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop there for a minute and then I'll do the last little bit, with the vase, but I'm going to leave it there. I think I'm more than happy with what I've got in. I'm just kind of enjoy just very relaxing, just kind of getting all these little bits and bats in, but I'm not going to put any more green in there because I want to keep the yellow predominantly. So I'll take a pause there, see how you're getting on. So I flipped over to doing this vase because I just love that colour. So I'm going to have a little go. So all I'm going to do here, I'm not going to keep these really sharp edges with my pencil either. I'm going to just make that wobble in the side so it's a little bit slightly looser, otherwise it could look very harsh. And then I'm going to go in with a slightly lighter version of this colour here on this side where it's just a little bit different. So I'm going to use, so if you've got cerulean blue is a great colour for this kind of thing, or a turquoisey colour if you've got one, but often they don't come in a kit. I have, I think this one's actually Phthalo, isn't it? Yeah, this one's the Phthalo blue. But if you water that down enough, I'm going to put a bit of yellow in it as well. It's quite a strong colour, is Phthalo blue, but I love it because you can mix it with other things. So let's see what we get here. I'll hold this over, start to bring this phthalo blue down a bit and thin it out just on its own. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so you can see it's already starting to be similar. But if I just add a touch of lemon yellow in there, just a touch, because I don't want it to be green. But sometimes it just makes it. There we go. Right, let's see now. Okay, I'm getting a bit nearer now with that. And I'm probably going to go some way between the two, so I'm just going to add a bit more, tiny bit more colour in there. But of course we can, I'm going to be adding some might have a bit more. Darker bits, sorry, and some might have a bit less. There we go, that feels lovely, so I'm going to go in with that. And I'm just got using a round brush. I used a bigger round brush. So this morning when I was working A3, what size did I use? 13, 12, so quite big, and I just use the end to kind of pull the paint round, like the whole side of the brush to do that, but obviously that's too big for this size. So I'm going to do a similar thing here, just want it nice and watery, and pull that round, and then I'll darken off some of the other areas. Can't really see that top bit anyway under there. Yeah. It depends how warm it is in in your space as well, and how fast things are drying. But you want to be able to, yeah, so keep that moving as much as you can whilst it's still damp. If you want to drop any more, drop in some colours and things, then that's a good time to do it. So this is where I might just, I'm just going to soften just by pushing my brush in and out a little bit. Just soften this edge slightly so it doesn't feel too linear. It is quite linear, but we want some natural feel to it as well. And I'm just going to thin this down even more so that I get really, so it's not completely clear there. Now, if it starts drying out too much, um, then you can just drop a little bit of water over the top, because I want to add a bit of darker to the edge here. And then, as it's going down, so we get some of that more natural feel. So I'm going to bring in just some more of this phthalo blue now. Just let's see, might be a bit dark, but we'll try. And just drop in on the edge here. Because it tends to get darker as we go to the base anyway of ours. So I'm just going to let that water sit there a little bit where it is darker. And I'm just going to dab it into place now where I want it to go. And then there's a few little linear bits I'd like to kind of get that on as well. So I'm going to pull those lines around a bit so it feels it's creating a little bit of shape as we do it. So you can do that. You can put contour lines and things on. And the dark one under here might pop in, but I'm just going to let that dry off a little bit. Might put some burnt sienna under there. So everybody was asking about backgrounds, and it's quite interesting because you can, you could have done popped a wash on if you wanted to, or you could work something in. I'm just going to do a bit of a table. You keep it quite light, and then we'll go into a more wash. So I'll go in with this biggest brush, but I might just pop some shadow that's coming around underneath it as well. So I'm going to keep mine nice and light. Both of these tables are quite light, but you can pop, like, if there's a shadow underneath or something, you could do that. I may have to stick with this one because I've done the same light on this vase. I'm going to want that to come down in front because that's obviously, otherwise if I keep mixing them up, it doesn't make sense really, because the light source on here is coming from a different place. So it's really, if you're putting any kind of a background in, I'm going to go for a greeny colour actually. I quite fancy that. In fact, I might use this forest green and water it right down. So you don't have to go with what's on there. You can mix things up. I'm going to add plenty of water so it's quite washy. But it's really, sometimes we just want to pop it on a surface so it just feels, let's just test that. Yeah, that's fine with me. So it just feels as though it's on, it's set on something. Now, I've probably not left that quite long enough to dry around here, so it might run a little bit. Yeah, and then you can drop a bit of a slightly darker shadow in wherever you need to. I'm doing mine out the front here. A bit of a shadow just at the back. But I mean, you can make more of this surface if you want to. I'm just keeping it nice and simple because I quite like the focus to be on the flowers. And making that a bit darker because I'm quite liking a bit of that dark colour in there actually. Sometimes these things happen. As you're doing it, you just having an experiment and you something that you do you quite like, so that's good. And I think I will probably just keep that simple and just leave it there, really. You can, if you're not careful, add too many things. And I could always, I could always say, darken this side a little bit more as well, because we can always do that with watercolor. That's one of the good things about it. You can go darker in certain areas if you want to. I'm not. That was running a little bit there. I'm not too worried about it falling out. It's okay. If it's really bothering you, then just create, make sure you letting that dry off a little bit before or whatever. But yeah, so quite relaxing all in all. And just a good opportunity to play with some colour. Quite simple, isn't it? But quite effective, I think. Yeah, those simpler colours, I think we overlook them sometimes and think, oh, there's not enough going in that, but actually we can do quite a bit with a very simple palette. With just, really, we've only used, I mean, I've only used 2 yellows, a brown, a burnt sienna, a blue and a green. Okay, maybe a couple of greens, but it's a very limited palette we've used. So, sometimes finding those really simple things with a simple palette and just exploring the range that you can get out of them is really quite interesting. So I hope that's been really useful. I think the other thing, this is still quite damp here, but I think maybe when this is dry, I would darken, just create a little bit more definition underneath here. But I'm not going to do it now because it's just going to run as soon as I do it, but I hope that's been helpful. And I will pause for the final time and come back to see how you're doing. And I hope you've enjoyed that one.